Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of our weekly Rashi study class with Rabbi Rebecca Schatz.
Before we even get to chapter 2, I'm going to ask very quickly. It took me 3 minutes to do this during the repetition of the Amidah, so I think we're going to be okay. I'm going to ask someone very quickly to just read through the English of chapter 1. No Rashi, just Megillah. We're just going to read through the chapter, verse 1 to verse whatever it is, 23 or something. And just to get a sense of, and I'll pull up the Safaria so those on Zoom can see, just to get a sense of where we're at when we start the first verse of the second chapter. Because one of the things that I think we all have recognized over the course of this class is that because we're going blessedly slow through each verse, we sometimes forget where we came from and definitely sometimes forget 5 verses before that. So before we get into chapter 2, let's just read through chapter 1. And we're just going to read the English because we're not dissecting anything. We're just reading for context. And then we'll go into chapter 2. So does someone just want to read for us? I'm pulling this up. People on Zoom, don't worry. It's coming. Okay, Paul, so just grab the microphone and we'll just read from the beginning of the chapter to the end of the chapter.
It happened in the days of Ahasuerus that Ahasuerus, who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Cush. In those days, when King Ahasuerus occupied the royal throne in the fortress Shushan, in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all of the officials and courtiers, the administration of Persia and Media, the nobles and the governors of the provinces in his service. For no fewer than 180 days, he displayed the vast riches of his kingdom and the splendid glory of his majesty. At the end of this period, the king gave a banquet for 7 days in the court of the king's palace for all the people who lived in the fortress Shushan, high and low alike. There were hangings of white cotton and blue wool, caught up by the cords of fine linen and purple wool. Sorry.
That's right.
Let me start again. There were hangings of white cotton and blue wool, caught up by cords of fine linen and purple wool to silver rods and alabaster columns. And there were couches of gold and silver on a pavement of marble, alabaster, mother of pearl, and mosaics. Royal wine was served in abundance, as befits a king, in golden beakers of varied design. And the rule for drinking was no restrictions, for the king had given orders to every palace steward to comply with each man's wishes.
In addition,
I think that's it. Is there another verse?
Yeah. I'll keep reading. In addition, Queen Vashti gave a banquet for women in the royal palace of King Ahasuerus. And on the 7th day, when the king was merry with wine, he ordered Mehuman, Bizita, Charbona, Bigta, Auta, Zetar, and Karkas, the 7 eunuchs in attendance of King Ahasuerus, to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing a royal diadem, to display her beauty to the peoples and the officials, for she was a beautiful woman. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command conveyed by the eunuchs. The king was greatly incensed, and his fury burned within him. Then the king consulted the sages learned in procedure, for it was the royal practice to turn to all who were versed in law and precedent. His closest advisors were Karshana, Shetad, Matat, Tarshish, Meresh, Marsana, and Memuchan, the 7 ministers of Persia and Media who had access to the royal presence and occupied the first place in the kingdom. What he asked shall be done according to law to Queen Vashti for failing to obey the command of King Ahasuerus conveyed by the eunuchs. Thereupon Memuchan declared in the presence of the king and the ministers, Queen Vashti has committed an offense not only against your majesty, but also against all the officials and against all the peoples in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus. For the queen's behavior will make all wives despise their husbands, as they reflect that King Ahasuerus himself ordered Queen Vashti to be brought before him, but she would not come. This very day, the ladies of Persia and Media who have heard of the queen's behavior will cite it to all your majesty's officials, and there will be no end to scorn and provocation. If it please your majesty, let a royal edict be issued by you, and let it be written into the laws of Persia and Media so that it cannot be abrogated, that Vashti shall never enter the presence of King Ahasuerus, and let your majesty bestow her royal state upon another who is more worthy than she. Then will the judgment executed by your majesty resound throughout your realm, vast though it is, and all wives will treat their husbands with respect, high and low alike. The proposal was approved by the king and the ministers, and the king did as Memucan proposed. Dispatches were sent to all the provinces of the king, to every province in its own script, and to every nation in its own language, that every man should wield authority in his home and speak the language of his own people. Okay. That's chapter 1. That's the Megillah. That's what happens according to the Megillah. Of course, we've looked at commentaries, we've looked at different translations, etc., but that is the Megillah. So I wanted us all to have the actual text in our heads as we go on to the second chapter. So will someone read for us the first verse of the second chapter? While you're reading, I'm just going to jump and get the copies, which are right here.
Achar hadvarim ha'ela kashoch Hamas Hamelech Achashverosh Zachar es Vashti ve'es asher osasa ve'es asher nigzar aleha. After these things, when the wrath of the king Ahasuerus had subsided, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what had been decreed against her.
Okay, questions, thoughts. What does this verse seem to be telling us? Yeah, Alan, can you pass the mic back, Norm? Thank you.
Just in this context, it appears that maybe he's having some second thoughts, some remorse about what he did.
Great, fabulous. So I'm just asking Hector for another microphone. What did you say, Joel?
Exiler's regret.
Exiler's regret. For the third time. Exiler's regret. Now fourth time. Great. So it seems like King Ahasuerus is kind of wondering, was this the thing that I was supposed to do? Right. And in a very well-written piece, the reason that I just read the chapter to us in anticipation is because he seemed so very sure right up until the last line to send it out to all the people, right, to all the men in all of their households. And now all of a sudden he's thinking, wait a second, was that the right thing? Was that the right thing to do? Did I make the right decision? Any other questions or thoughts about this particular verse before we look at the Rashi? Yeah, Rebecca.
Just the way that it's worded and what had been decreed against her.
Yeah.
It doesn't say what he had decreed against her. So already it's, kind of deflecting that, this was something decreed against her. It wasn't me personally who was involved.
Great. That's a really fantastic thing to notice, that that not only might he regret it, but he's not actually taking responsibility for it, right? Maybe that's because he regrets it, or maybe because he really wants to make sure that those who made the decree come to be, that was going to be, that's their responsibility, right? He had nothing to do with it, so to speak. Other thoughts or comments on this? Yeah, Joel.
Well, just what he remembered. What he remembered about her, what he remembered she had done.
Great.
I know Rashi has an opinion, but it's not definitive.
Great, exactly. So it's interesting that that there are these different ways, and we will look in a moment, but there's these different ways of understanding Zachar et Vashti, right? First of all, that is not how it's translated here in at least in Safaria's translation, right? Zachar et Vashti in the Safaria translation, which is probably JPS, I don't really remember, is that he thought of Vashti, right? But we all know that memory is very different than just thinking, right? It's a very first of all, we have words for thinking in English, so if it was just thinking, we would be able to say that. But there's something that recalling, right? There's something about the memory here that's actually very important. And we'll see in the Esther Rabbah as to why we think Zachar is the word that's used here as opposed to just thinking. But it's interesting that the translation into our language isn't actually putting that weight of memory into the translation. Marshall, were you going to say something?
To use the word right now, where recall, and
Yeah.
recall means to call back.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Right. So maybe that was his wish, was to be able to call her back. Yeah, Rick.
Hi, can I ask about kisoch? I'm not familiar with the word. I like the trope on it. It brings attention to the word. It stands alone. But is that supposed to be subsided? I don't recognize the word, so I'm glad Leonard is there with his sources.
Oh yeah, Leonard can tell us, or I can also show you a handy dandy. Leonard, do you want to take a stab at it?
I thought it might be interesting because his anger ending they could have used all sorts of different words for ending.
Yeah.
Like Vayichal, I think Moses, when he ended his talk, his speech.
Right.
But
so here it seems to mean to abate. Right. When we look at the trends, I just wanted to show you that you can do this on Safari. Yeah. So if you highlight the word, and then it will show you all of this translation here. So
is it kishoch? Is it a shin or is it a sin? Because there it looks like. But in my book,
that's
red
a
book,
really interesting question.
In my red book, it's a sin.
Yeah.
So I love that.
In my book, it's both. Yeah.
Here. Scroll up to the top on the right.
The top on the right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's for God, isn't it? Is it?
It yes. So to forget is lishchoach, right?
Yeah.
But I actually think it's spelled.
That's what the chet. That's what the
right.
chet.
Exactly. It's spelled differently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he didn't forget, or he remembered.
Yeah. Shachachet spelled with a chet at the end. But this still means, I mean, you could connect the two, actually, the forgetting and the subsiding, right? That if you forget something, it's probably subsided from your brain. But this idea of abating something, right? So his anger had decreased over time, it seems. We're also going to see, I think I brought a commentary on what does achar mean here, like how much time are we talking about when it says afterwards. So we all know that time, pushes things on, moves things through us. So it's possible that that's what it's talking about, that after some time, this anger had subsided. Yeah, Rachel.
Thank you.
Also thinking about, he made this decision after he'd been drunk for a week. In this reflection, he's sobered up.
Right. Yeah. I mean, definitely if we want to read into behaviors that we think could have come with his actions, it makes sense that now he might be regretting some of those actions. Okay, let's look at the Rashi. Who was reading? Oh, Norm.
Zachar es Vashti, es Yafya v'ne'etzav. He remembered her, meaning her beauty, and became sad.
Great. Anybody want to say anything about this?
He was a horny bastard.
Okay, well, you said it and I didn't. All right. There we go. So the idea here is that he was lonely, right? But lonely for some kind of what it seems like physical connection to Vashti, not just that she was a really lovely partner and took care of him, right? So it seems like her beauty, her looks, who she was physically was something that he was now missing. Hold on one second. Alan was raising his hand.
It's a little surprising, only because he had a harem of other women from whom he could choose. So perhaps Vashti was queen and his favorite at the time, but if she's not around for whatever reason, then there would be somebody else. Because later on we read about, that Esther says, well, I don't know. Mordecai is talking to her, says, I don't remember. I'm not sure he's going to pick me because I haven't seen him in 30 days.
Right.
He's seen other women during that time. Imagine that.
Right. Right. It is an interesting idea that if there were so many other women around, why is it important for us to recognize her beauty? Right. But I do think, and I've said this all along in chapter 1, the rabbis are trying very hard to remind us that Vashti did something wrong, right? And that there is this element of difference that Vashti had amidst all these other women who were also around. And so maybe there was something about her beauty. Maybe, I don't know anything about harems, but maybe there was, something in terms of priority of relationship. Maybe she was, his first choice, so to speak. It's like terrible to be saying these things. No, for sure. But I just mean physically, maybe there's priority there. I don't really know. Thank goodness I don't really know. Yeah, Norm.
Before Ahasuerus married her, she already was a princess who had been brought up
correct
to understand the nature of being a queen and royalty. Mm-hmm. She was somebody who gave him various kinds of advice and pressures over the course of their relationship.
Right.
She was not merely a pretty face or body. She was an important relationship, and now he's missing that.
Yeah, that is a great commentary. That's not what Rashi's saying, right? Like that's lovely, and I think that would be a really nice way of understanding this. But what Rashi's saying is she was really pretty, and that was sad that she was now gone, right? And so I think that's the point that I was trying to make in terms of this like vilification of what she was to him, in terms of her physicality. Okay, Rachel, and then Renee. Steinsaltz is doing exactly what everyone's doing, which is what does it mean that he's forgetting her? So, or remembering her, that. Correct. Yes, right.
That she was actually, killed, right? Because she came down naked, even though that.
Right, exactly. Right. Okay, Renee, you've had your hand up for a while.
I was just going to say that he just appears very shallow because his focus is on the outer attributes and he's not focusing on anything positive that she has to offer as a human being.
Right, according to Rashi, right? Yeah, I agree. Sorry, I was just commenting that Joel said according to Rashi. Yes, I think you're right. I think he kind of has been all along. Like there hasn't really been any depth to King Ahasuerus, right? In any way, shape, or form yet in the Megillah. And yes, according to Rashi, the way in which he is remembering her is a very shallow, very vain way of remembering somebody. And also, we have no idea, right? We have no idea what it meant that he remembered her, which is actually a very good transition into the Midrash here, which I'm just going to read in the English. I typically don't bring extra commentaries if there is a Rashi, but I thought this one was particularly interesting. So I'm just going to read it, and I'm going to skip around. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Achar, meaning after these matters, when the fury of King Ahasuerus had abated, Rabbi Avu said in the name of Rabbi Yosef ben Zimra, everywhere that achar, the word, is stated, it means just after, right? So achar minyan, right after minyan was Rashi class, right? Immediately after, not 3 weeks after. Acharei means significantly after. So if we're using the word achar, it seems to mean that immediately after those edicts were sent out, immediately after this happened, again, this is just Midrash, just as a reminder, that now all of a sudden he's regretting it. If it had said acharei, then it could mean that it had been, weeks, months, years, whatever later. The rabbis in the name of Rabbi Yosef ben Zimra say everywhere that acharei is stated, it means just after, but achar means significantly after. So the Midrash is doing something that all rabbis like to do, which is, well, actually, I thought exactly the opposite. So far, it's unclear. Does achar mean immediately after, or does achar mean significantly after, right? There's two different opinions. When keshoch, right, we're bringing up this word again, the fury of King Ahasuerus had abated. Beshoch is not written here, but rather keshoch, right? The kaf rather than the bet. Abatement that is not abatement. He remembered Vashti, that decree that he had decreed for her to enter naked before him, and she did not enter. he became angry and killed her. Just as a reminder, we don't know that she entered naked, and we don't know that she was killed. So we're using other midrash here to give another midrash. But the fact that the ke is used that means like, as opposed to in or for or because, which is what the be could have meant. So that's why it says abatement that is not abatement, right? It's a simile to abatement. It's not necessarily actual. Once he had killed her, he began regretting it. Again, we don't know that from the Megillah. We just know that from Midrash. Why? Because she had behaved correctly. And what was decreed against her unjustly? Why did this befall her? Because she would not allow King Ahasuerus to grant permission to build the temple. Okay, now we're just getting into the, more and more stories. So the idea here with both Achar and also this Keshoch is that we actually don't know whether it was right after or significantly after. But the fact that these words are used so that we understand that it wasn't exactly abatement, right, but it was kind of like it, seems to then make us think that perhaps it was, right after. He wasn't so sure if that was the right thing to do. But it's not. I think what the Midrash is trying to tell us is that it wasn't 100% clear, right, that this was right after or significantly after, but nothing of this is explicit, and therefore we're not really sure, like, was he actually regretful? Did he actually miss her? Was this immediately? Was this after? Did you want to say something, Marshall? Is there a mic? Oh, Norm, can you pass the microphone? Hector said he's bringing another one.
I remember the phrase "achar hadvarim ha'eleh" in the story of Abraham.
Yes,
And God tested Abraham.
Right, right.
So I don't recall exactly what occurred right before that. Was that just the annunciation of Isaac's, of the upcoming birth?
I would have to look. I don't remember exactly what happens right before.
Okay.
That phrase, achar
Hadvarim ha'eleh.
That's several times in Rashi about different things that are going on.
Right, I think Marshall's just specifically talking about a spot with Avraham. I just don't remember what
sense of immediacy.
Right.
Whatever occurred before.
Right.
Reading the translation and looking at the Hebrew of the translation of altar.
Yeah.
After these things, comma, when King Ahasuerus' wrath subsided, comma, he recalled Vashti. That's one direct object phrase.
Right.
And what she had done and what was decreed about her. So you have three etin, word et, it always indicates a direct object.
Right.
Right.
Interesting.
So altar, in effect, has, I think, an insightful comment here. He said, these words may indicate ambivalence on the part of the king.
Right.
His wrath had subsided, and he remembers Vashti, perhaps conscious of the fact that he remains without a queen.
Mm-hmm.
But he also remembers her disobedience. That's Asher Asata, right? He may well be hesitant about what to do, which would then invite the detailed advice of his courtiers that begins in the next verse.
Great. That I think that ambivalence is what is being picked up by altar also, but definitely in this midrash. Do you want to say something, Joel?
Well, just that the Asher Asta, Asata, okay, could be talking about the good things she's done, all the things that she's done over the years, or her crime.
Sure,
what her crime was.
Sure, right, and or a mixture, right? it could have been all those things. Yeah, Barry, you can use it. Okay.
So this, going back to the previous Vayiksof Hamelach, he was wrathful. Not only that she refused his order to come, but according to Rava, she not only refused to come, but she also sent him a message with a messenger, you son of my father's stableman.
Where are you?
I'm in, this is 12 East.
Oh, you're going back to the other chapter in the middle of the chapter.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Going back to the instance of the king becoming wrathful. And according to Rava, it was not only her refusal to come, but the inside message she was giving that you, my father's stableman, you can't hold your liquor. But she's basically that he's not really part of the royal lineage, and it's through her that he is royal. And this became the cause of his being wrathful, and now comes chapter 2, rethinking what the cause of this was.
So it's interesting to think about, what could happen to him if she's gone based off of his royalty, right? Because if he became king based off of marrying someone who was already royal, what then happens when she's gone, right? So that's an interesting connection back. It seems like he remains king, but that's an interesting connection back to him. Okay, so let's look at the next verse. Who wants to read 2:2 for us? This is to Alan's point, actually. So maybe, Alan, you should read it.
ויאמרו נערי המלך משרתיו יבקשו למלך נערות בתולות טובות מראה. The king's servants who were there with him said, Yavakshu, let's seek out, let's bring out beautiful young na'arot, young women. Doesn't say bitulot, virgins, as it says here. Oh, that's a bitulot. Never na'arot bitulot. Yeah, so it would be virgins, beautiful virgins for the king.
Okay. So to Alan's point, right, even before Rashi comments in, which, by the way, I want us all to remember that when Rashi is commenting on anything, Torah, Megillah, whatever, Rashi is not reading that verse for the first time. So Rashi knows that this verse comes next. So it is interesting that even his own commentaries in his brain that influence commentaries, right? Like that he knows that this comes next, and the commentary before really feeds us into this next verse. Anyway, that's just a fascinating thing to think about. What we are seeing here, Na'arei HaMelech, what does that mean? Yeah, Norm? Wait, just translate the words. What's Na'arei HaMelech?
Na'arei, which is a great cognate to the Yiddish word nar, Na'arei they're young lads.
Okay, great. So Na'arei HaMelech are these young people, men, who were around the king, who attended to him. It's interesting that we're not talking about the eunuchs. We're not talking about his advisors. We're talking about the young men who attended to him, probably got him dressed and got him his food and, made sure he had his drink, et cetera, et cetera. The young, potentially his valets, right? I don't know what their jobs were, but young men were around. And they said that we should get the young women who are also beautiful to be brought to our majesty, right? What does this point out to us then about what's happening here? If the first verse is saying that the king was calming down, let's say, and he thought of Vashti and what she had done, now these young men are saying, let's get you some other young, beautiful virgins to be around our king.
So it points to superficiality of what's going on here, rather than the royal aspect of missing Vashti. It's the beauty thing. It's physical, only physical, superficial.
Okay, so it seems to be only superficial. Renee, did you want to say something?
I was going to say, Norm brought up the Yiddish word. The Yiddish word for nar, somebody who's a nar is somebody who doesn't know anything, really. So it makes sense that if we're going with the superficiality here, that these young people didn't really know anything. They were just like focusing on the outer aspects and not the inner person.
Right. Again, Rashi knew what verse was coming next, right? These young boys said, "Oh, you miss her? Let us find you some other really beautiful young women." Because that's what they also thought that he was missing, was just having a young thing around, right? That's what they were saying. And so that's why Rashi's comment is Rashi's comment. Norm.
Ahasuerus always seems to agree with whoever last spoke with him. It doesn't matter whether it's the high leaders that we dealt with in the previous chapter, his wife when she was around, or now these servants who happen to be taking care of things, and they come up with the idea, gee, we'd really like to have a whole bunch of beautiful virgins show up.
Right. Though, interestingly, he doesn't do that. Right. So he might be listening to the last person, but the next thing that's going to happen is not him actually. They say that they're going to do it, and he doesn't actually, he's not the one making it happen. So you're right that he is definitely listening to that which comes right before. But I think what we'll see in a second is that he ends up kind of just leaving the scene a little bit. Yeah, Rachel.
Just that I was seeing these attendants described as young boys. Yeah. So let's think of, early U.S. wires.
Oh boy,
attending on the king, and I think they're just as interested in entertaining themselves,
right,
as in entertaining the king.
Right. I think this brings up a really good point that everyone's just out for themselves, right? And at the end of the day, when we look at both King Ahasuerus, even if we look at Vashti, though I think she had a little bit more depth to what she was doing, but definitely these younger boys, I don't know what else to call them, they definitely were they were solving the problem the way that they would want the problem solved, right? Oh, okay, you miss her. Let's get other women to be around you, and then you won't miss her so much, right? It's a very classic, I know what the problem is, and I'm going to solve it because this is how I would solve it, right? And I just want to point out, I just opened to see if there are other commentaries here, but the interesting thing is that there's no commentary on this in the classic form, right? No Rashi, there's no Talmud or Midrash, at least in this particular book. There is a Rashbam on it, which I'll look at in a second to see if it's worth sharing with everybody, but it doesn't look like it is just from a glance. It's really interesting that this was kind of just like, okay, sure, boys will be boys, like moving on to the next verse, right? It's not really that interesting to anybody. Yeah, Leonard?
I just want to point out in defense of the young lads,
sure,
that this worked.
What does that mean?
He got a new wife and he was very happy with her.
Maybe. I mean, it doesn't mean that he didn't miss her, though. I think, right, the whole point here, and for those who remarry after losing a spouse, which obviously this is not equated to the same kind of thing, but for those who move on after a relationship, let me put it that way, it doesn't mean that you don't think of the other person, right? It just means that there is another person who comes along who can support you and care for you and take care of your needs and all those kinds of things. So maybe, but yeah, maybe. I'm not sure that it's like equatable, but potentially. Yeah, Norm.
I just want to say the next two verses.
Okay, but wait,
are continuing the same quote.
Yeah.
So we'll get plenty of commentaries
Correct.
on the rest of what they say.
Yeah, not commentary, but we'll get plenty of Megillah. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Alan, why don't you just keep reading because you didn't get any commentaries on this one.
ויפקד המלך פיקודים בכל מדינות מלכותו, ויקבצו את כל נערה בתולה טובה מראה אל שושן הבירה, אל בית הנשים, על יד Hega Saris Hamelech Shamar
Shomer.
Shomer Hanashim Benaton Tamrakihen.
Tamrukehen.
Tamrukehen.
Yeah, it's a funny word.
I've never seen that.
But supposedly it means cosmetics. So, why would you know that word? Rick, get ready. Lots of fun trope. So just, get your commentaries ready. Okay. Any thoughts here other than the trope? Any thoughts? What's going on here? Oh, read the translation.
Let your majesty appoint officers in every province of your realm to assemble all the beautiful young virgins at the fortress Shushan, and the harem under the supervision of Hege, the king's eunuch, guardian of the women. Let them be provided with their cosmetics.
Okay. Thoughts? Anyone want to say anything about this verse? Okay, yeah, Paul.
The two things I see here is they're assembling the beauties, and also they're making sure by putting them in charge of the eunuchs that no one else is going to defile them.
Yeah, great. So it seems like we are trying to get another beautiful girl for the king, but also there are rules, right? And there are restrictions and there are boundaries, and we want to make sure that Vashti didn't influence anything that could be happening post, her time with the king. It seems like we are very much under the supervision of a eunuch. I mean, it kind of makes sense in terms of having a harem, but also interesting that even needs to be mentioned, right? People, I was downstairs during Minyan last week, and someone said, who was throwing away the glass cups? Because it says, do not throw away the glass cups. Please put them in the green bin. And I said, I have no idea. What makes you think someone was doing that? And the person said, well, if someone wasn't doing that, we wouldn't have a sign that tells people not to do it, right? So it's the same idea here. Is it wouldn't be written in if it didn't need to be heard by us that it was necessary, right? So having someone in charge of this harem, right, and these women was important. We assume because of what Vashti did, we want to make sure that no one's gonna get out of line, so to speak.
Were the eunuchs the makeup artists?
Sorry?
Were the eunuchs the makeup artists?
I don't know. I don't think so. Rick, did you want to share something?
Well, you challenged me to come up with some trope stuff.
I sure did.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of tropes here.
Yeah. So it's great. You could build a story around it. So here it goes. So verse 3, the Zarka on Pikidim, it's defined as a scattered kind of trope. It's like I call it like a waterfall. Da 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 da. Right? It's spread out. So they're spreading the search to the different provinces. Medinot Malchuto is the resolution of that. So they're going to send out. Like in Cinderella, is it? Whatever, they're gonna look for somebody, right? And then it goes Kol Na'ara V'Tula. So there, the Tilisha Gedola there. The emphasis is on V'Tula, on virgins, but so it's building to a high point, and then Tovat Mar'eh, the Kadmavi Azla, Larry Herman's favorite trope. The drama, it's a crescendo, right? That's the most important thing, that she be good looking, not that she's smart, not that it's the bathing suit competition. It's not whether she can play an instrument, right? So and then that's the high point, and then it tapers off certainly after that, just to normal trope, to the capital of the city, and then Hege is introduced. This is the first time we have Hege, and his name changes to Haggai, but according to this, he's the same person with a Yud instead of an Aleph. Maybe there's Drosh on that. I don't know. But there's some trope for you.
Yeah, no, that was beautifully done. You stepped right into that challenge. I just want to pause really quickly to show you the picture in this graphic novel of Megillat Esther, because I think it'll explain some of the cosmetics aspects here. They were concerned, right, that the women look the way that they should look when approaching the king. So even if they were beautiful, they had to go through a certain process to look a certain way for the king. We see this all the time, right? You see this on the red carpet of the Oscars. Like this isn't a surprising thing, even in our own society, right? Even if someone is naturally beautiful, oftentimes women, though sometimes men, will dress themselves up in a certain way, to look a certain way, to present themselves a certain way before someone else. So I just want to show this very quickly. I'll pass it around to the people in the room, but then just to show here, this picture in the middle, right here, this picture, I'm going to pass it around. You're in the room, so I'm going to pass it around. Oh, thank you. Okay. So sorry, it's not straight. Okay. So this picture here seems to show a very large banquet hall of women getting prepped, right? They're getting their nails done. They're getting their hair done. They're laying down on a chaise to be able to, eat some food before they have to see the king. They're being prepped, right? They're being prepped for whatever is to come next. I can pass this around. You can see it. So I just want to point that out because I think the cosmetics piece is sometimes like a weird thing to wrap our heads around. Did you want to say something, Barry? Okay.
So I'm envisioning a huge empire-wide net reaching from India to Ethiopia, a bureaucratic machine process, so to speak, to gather all these women. They're not volunteering to come in. They're being sought. They're being brought in from this entire empire. Keeping in mind how long it takes to go by horse, I guess was the fastest moving thing they had then, from his palace to India to Ethiopia to back again. That's that time period to gather all these women. The beautification process was not a one day, one afternoon at the beauty parlor. This is a whole year long process to go through this process. So it's a machine process to bring objects, female objects, to the king. It's a pretty gross metaphor.
There was an article just the last couple of days in the New York Times about ultra rich women and how they have their faces redone once, and that naturally faces don't look like that. That if you know what you're looking for, you can identify someone who's had this variety of surgeries that are only to change the appearance. And that's kind of what this made me think of.
Hopefully they were young enough that they didn't need all that, but yeah, Joel.
Reminds me of the scene from Wizard of Oz. Meet the
That's true. Yeah, that's very good, very good. Before we go to the Rashi, I want to read you a midrash because I think that there's something we have to remember that the Megillah was written for us as Jews to understand something not just about our history and people, but also about how we treated others around us. And so the midrash that's written in here is from Esther Rabbah 5:3, and I don't think I brought it on this sheet. No, I didn't. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to read it here. It's on this same verse. Let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom. The attractive women of the kingdom would shame the Jewish women, calling them ugly and unattractive. They were therefore made to suffer the shame of being brought to the king, only to be bested by a Jewish woman. This derision of the Jewish woman was symptomatic of pervasive anti-Semitism. If a Jew and a native of the land shared a courtyard and that person found that the Jew had merely touched the other person's pot, the non-Jew's pot, he would consider it contaminated. If a Jew made food in the other person's pot, that person who was not perturbed by insects and vermin in his food would be repulsed and smash the pot. They're really intense and kind of disgusting in a way, midrash, but it just shows that even in moments like this, what the midrash is trying to remind us and tell us is that there was a difference between those who were Jewish and those who were not in the way in which people were seen and if they were beautiful or not. It says none of this in the Megillah, by the way. This is complete midrash. And the midrash is written by rabbis who are trying to remind us of things that have happened to our people and how to look out for those things in our own lives. So I'm not saying that this is rooted in anything really even substantial in the Megillah, but it was just an interesting way for you to see the undercurrent of why our rabbis teach what they teach when we're looking at the Megillah. Okay, Norm, very quickly, and then we're going to go to the Rashi.
I just wanted to say that we're still simply reading the recommendation of the
young guys.
The young guys.
Yep, that's exactly right. Okay, now, Alan, you get some Rashis.
V'yefaked hamelech pikudim. Lefi shekol pakid ufakid yuduot lo nashim hayafot shebinato. That I love this.
It's like a draft.
Yeah, this is something that.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Let the king, let his majesty.
Mm-hmm.
Since every commissioner is familiar with the beautiful women in his province.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. It reminds me of Casablanca, where Lieutenant Renat knew every single woman there and would take advantage of it in order to get the usual suspects. That's something else. That's what's going to.
Elon, do you have anything to say about this? I feel like you've been quiet on a very Elon verse.
No, not really. I think it's all been covered.
Yeah, we've already covered it. Okay. It's really gross, right? As a woman, I wouldn't want to be, picked for dodgeball, as it were, based off of someone who thought that in all of the province, I was or was not as beautiful as the person next to me, right? It's really not great. And by the way, it's yet another example of where King Ahasuerus doesn't take any responsibility, right? Now, maybe rightfully so. Maybe he just, he doesn't know all the women, obviously. But instead of just saying all women should come to be in front of the king, he's saying no, only the women, the only women who should come are the women who are beautiful, and y'all should be the ones to tell me who is beautiful because you know them. Anyway, it just gets more and more ridiculous as we continue to read through, but that is what Rashi is suggesting. Yeah.
I think Rashi is plumb wrong.
Oh, well, okay.
They are recommending that he appoint officials to do this.
Right.
Not that he simply send out a notice to the existing satraps and kings and princes or whatever,
right.
Rather that he appoint officials to conduct this search.
Right.
Not because they already know who's beautiful, but because they're going to conduct pageants or whatever in the various places they go to find who's the most beautiful. The theory is not that whoever is running the government in Media or Kush or Hodu knows who are the most beautiful women, because they probably have their hands full doing a lot of other things and they have to please their own spouses and or harems. But rather they should appoint delegates to do that. If asked, they might say, gee, we would be great at that. But aside from that, they're saying, appoint somebody to do this.
Yeah.
This means somebody for whom this is their job, not the existing officials or commissioners.
Oh, right. All right. We'll let Rashi know.
One other point here on the immaturity of this whole process is nowhere in here is any effort made to find from Ahasuerus what does he want? what is the partner requirement that he needs?
Right.
The whole thing is on, some fake identity of beauty.
Mhm.
It's built for failure.
So that is going to come next, but you are right that so far we don't have any idea what King Ahasuerus wants. We're assuming that he just wants someone beautiful like Vashti. Okay, because of time, I just want us to go to the next Rashi. So can we pass the microphone down to Alan? Okay, we're going to talk about some makeup, Alan. Okay. Tamru Kehen.
Tom.
Exactly.
Oh, Joel, that was. I will.
A joke, and he's telling us to let it go.
We will let it go.
Go, Alan.
Okay. Tabukehen. Hein hadvarim hamitzu tzechin kemo umarak v'shatef.
Shutaf, yeah.
Shutaf. V'shutaf.
Mm-hmm.
Shemen arav umine simanim uvesamim ha-mitaharin ume'adinin et habasar.
Okay.
All right. They're cosmetics. These are things that clean the skin, as in that shall be purged based on umarak and rinsed. They're
exfoliants. Seriously.
Okay.
Does everybody know what that means? Okay. You're all looking at me like I'm crazy. Okay.
These exfoliants are perfumed oils, various ingredients and spices that cleanse and soften the skin.
Yeah. So one thing, not to make this very dark, but just one thing that when I read this, at least, especially as someone who is very involved in tahara, this actually is the kind of thing that you talk about when you're talking about doing tahara over someone who has died and is going to be buried, right? You get cleansing the skin, cleansing the body for burial. We don't put any perfumes or anything like that on the body, so that's a difference, obviously. But just in terms of that cleansing, right, that there is something about readying your body for the next stage. Now, in this case, they're talking about beautifying, which is a whole different category than what tahara is doing for a body. But just there are certain words in here that make me think of tahara, one of them being hametaharin, that's the first one. But also just this idea of basar, right? We're really just talking about the skin, the body. We're not talking about the soul, to get back to the point of berries, and just in terms of like, there's no depth here. It's all the surface, right? So when you're cleaning a body for burial, you are taking care of the soul by cleansing the body in a respectful way, but you are ultimately just cleansing the body, right? We don't believe that you are cleansing the soul. That's on the person and the family to come afterwards. So I wanted to point that out because that's obviously not what's happening here, but it is just an interesting correlation in terms of some of the words and the way in which it's being described.
Reacting to what you just said about tahara, in tahara, you're returning the body to its natural, or without cosmetics and without decoration, that one should leave this world the way one came into this world, without big footputs. And this is kind of thematically the contrast. Right. Let's get you footputs.
And on that footputs note, Rebecca, do you have one last thing to say? Okay. Do you have a microphone here?
I was just going to say something about the control that doing this centrally by the palace, doing everybody's cleansing and exfoliating and all that centrally, they have control over it and can do it a certain way. It reminds me a little bit of when I used to help before the middle school musical performance, we would do makeup for the kids, both girls and boys, and you do the face makeup, the eyes, whatever, and they wouldn't do it themselves. We would, a couple of the moms would do it and would, have a standard process and do it so that there was control and quality control and all that. So.
Okay, we're going to go on to verse 4 next week. Next week. Yes, next week. Okay. Lovely to see you all.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.